Well, this is a first video in a hope-to-be new series. Call it something like It Could Happen. Maybe that's a good title. Wreck or ruin, or, rescue or ruin, I don't know, whatever. Just wasted a bunch of time for nothing. So anyway, the thought of the day is, how would it change the world if we did achieve essentially eternal life? You know what I mean? If we solve the critical genetic requirement that we age, so we could, because it is just genetic. I mean, we don't age, we don't degrade for any practical necessity. I mean, it's not a physical thing, it's a genetic thing, it's a programming issue. The software is designed to kill itself. It's a programming issue, and there really is no reason to think that geneticists won't eventually find out how to fix that. I guess I would, and just to give a small introduction to the biology part of it, I mean, there are some catches to it. Obviously, the genetic thing isn't a simple component of our genes that makes us age. It's obviously something structural that's a little bit subtle and harder to get rid of than just slicing a hunk of DNA off. The bad program, you can't just knock off that little bit of bad code. It's going to be harder than that, I think, because it seems obvious that we have all these mutations, horrible mutations that people do survive. But as far as we know, there's never been a human immortal. Okay, there hasn't been a person who lived to be 500 or 700 years old or any of this stuff. Beyond biblical fairy tales. So the mutation has never been able to distort that programming that says we must age. So that programming, it's probably partly the cause of that is probably because the aging process was part of the code in the really, when we were friggin' algae, is probably where that started, okay? Because even algae has to die if it's going to reproduce. And so it's really an old part of the structure. But anyway, my point would be that no matter how old it is, it's something that we may be able to remove from our genetic code. Maybe that would have to happen in some embryonic state, maybe not. But regardless, there might be a therapy, where you can just, you take some shots, whatever, the DNA is changed, and this, and you don't die, and you don't get any older, and you might even get younger. I mean, that's certainly a possibility. So anyway, to get to the point, how would this change the world? I mean, what's the implication of something like that? Because obviously you can't have, let's say if we live to be 200 or 300 or 400 years old, or we lived until we decide we have lived enough, it gets kind of complicated because obviously people can't wrap their life around raising kids or that kind of stuff, because there's no way we're going to be able to control population if people don't die. And so that's not going to be an option for people. They're not going to be able to have 433 kids or something. It's just not going to work. And then you run into the problem of just the kind of, how do you keep people interested? You've been to Disney World. Oh yeah, well, it's 9,434th time. I mean, there's probably a point where you get kind of saturated with life, and it's hard to motivate yourself. But it just, like I said, it's just intriguing how this would change the nature of human society, because it would sort of blow a hole in the whole credibility of the religious thing in a lot of ways, because people would have to live different kinds of lives. And to me, it's just a curious question, like would we survive something like that? Would people be able to adapt to living life that way, because we would have to make rational choices about when it is that you lived long enough. Okay, I'm done, and you make room for somebody else. And you know, it's just like I said, because there's still going to be people who are going to be obsessed with raising kids. That's all they're going to, you know, that's all they live for. I don't really understand it, but that's how most people are, apparently. I mean, you know. So anyway, it's just an interesting question, I think. Maybe I'll do 2 subjects here since I got the time as well. I mean, the other subject I thought was sort of interesting is, you know, back to this, I've raised it before, but what if we invented a cap you could wear, and it would be a perfect lie detector test. I mean, it would sense the inhibition in the brain regarding anything said or, you know, a thought, and you know, be able to analyze that inhibition enough to realize when a lie and when it's not a lie, when it's just thoughtfulness and whatever. So I won't go into the science of it, but let's just say it's a perfect lie detector test. You know, 100% reliable, as long as the statement is, you know, simple enough and accurate enough. I mean, you know, it changed the world. I mean, how could we could survive a future this way almost, because yeah, then we could understand people's psychiatric stability. Okay, so yes, you know, there's people out there, you know, you could say, do you want to destroy all life on Earth? And they'll say, no, I don't want to do that, but you know, inside they really do. You know, so I mean, we could catch the Timothy McVeighs and the rest of it beforehand. And then the other side of it is our politics would be completely different, because, you know, we could force everybody working in government to do their job and be honest, and no more fucking around, no more bullshit, and that would be a huge improvement. You know, the real problem would be in personal relationships with people. I can imagine it being very hard to maintain a relationship when people have to be, you know, when the wife can say, well, put the hat on, you know, tell the truth, and, you know, but in a way it might be good, because then maybe people would get into relationships more honestly, and, you know, they wouldn't get caught up in that cycle of bullshit to start with. And so maybe there'd be, if you're honest from the beginning, then maybe it'd be easy to stay honest all the way through. But it's an interesting question. I don't, you know, if somebody wants to do a video on it, that's great, just because it is a little complex, the subject, to be writing just comments. So anyway, if you have ideas regarding things that you see as a possibility on the horizon, you know, things that can happen, and that would create huge change in how we would have to live on this planet, you could suggest the subject, and I'll give it some thought and do a video. But I guess that's it. It's just a couple of ideas that just popped in my head today. So, like I said, I hope to have other ideas that pop into my head on this general subject, and to do future videos. So that would be it. Trying to use my brain, trying to get back to the old agenda. A little awkward, not quite there yet.